clinics, you all have your own server, your own database. What you do then is you, one of you volunteers, you find a place where you host this thing called an integrator, which is a bus that you all connect to the internet. And then you turn on integration by putting in the appropriate passwords and security kind of features, and then you're integrated.
So you're integrated live all the time, or is it sort of upload every once in a while?
It depends on how quickly you set the refresh rates. You might set it at, let's say, once a day or every hour. And again, you want to optimize it in terms of the usability of the system and such. But yeah, it's essentially live. I mean, we kind of debated that a little bit because we were thinking in some cases, a client might leave your office and go to the emergency department, and so something like that would require something that's within an hour, let's say. But certainly, I think in most cases, people don't have an event, for days or something. So once a day can be called for. So.
How do you put your pictures in? I'd like to have pictures in all my files too.
Right. So that's very easy. Essentially, you just click when you click on a photo. The photo section is a silhouette of the client, and then you just get a little interface that says browse, upload. That's it. So you upload a JPEG to it.
That only applies to Casa, right, Casey?
Yeah. So this is just to clarify software. So this is Oscar software, and you just have to turn a few configurations on, and in your installation, and then you'll have all of these features. So yeah, just a question of how you have this all. You don't have a picture in the new kind of Oscar user interface, like the progress note section, so that's something that kind of we're thinking about, like we're removing that picture.
If you put it on your main demographic sheet, that would be great.
Exactly. So it is in a place like that right now. But it's not in the...
So did you guys put that in, or is it?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's it. So again, that was one of the things that seems a little controversial, because some people want featuring, some people don't want featuring. So we got subject to one of our focus groups of asking clients, well, how do they feel about pictures that make sense?
If they don't want it in, they just say, don't take my picture. It's not
Exactly. And that's exactly what people were saying. And a number of people said that they wanted their pictures included because they, people felt that they were, people were stealing their identity or presenting themselves as themselves. Somebody else might tell us that they were them.
Sure, somebody steals your Medicare card and goes on a bunch of narcotics.
Yeah.
You want
I just want to say that this system that you've developed is now running in Ottawa, the city of Ottawa, as well as city of Hamilton. So if you know people who are working in the shelter network in Vancouver, tell them they don't have to look around for another system.
So this is all still open source now?
This is Oscar.
This is Oscar. I was showing you Oscar. This is Oscar with configuration. We talked a little bit about this as well at some of our meetings. Was branding Oscar and how all this works. And one of my regrets was calling this Casey very early on because that name is kind of stuck now. People think Casey. But it's really the software is Oscar. And I think David was always like, oh, it's okay to rebrand and use different names. But I think it's important to stick to a single name, just an advantage to that. The other thing that we thought about was describing Oscar as a suite of applications rather than just an individual. And so if you look at the Oscar main page, that's what you'll see now, that Oscar describes as a suite of applications that can be used by social service agencies, by physician practices, by nursing homes or shelters or housing providers for a whole bunch of different uses. Yeah.
In terms of privacy and the consent, have you done some special things there in terms of limiting what people can see, or if people have access, whether they're a caseworker at the shelter or whatever, do they get to see everything that's in the record?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So that was one of the first things that we did. We spent several years of programming just massaging Oscar so that you could have kind of very granular, kind of role-based access. So in a particular agency, you can very specifically say what a social worker can see or not see in Those are progress notes, so you can actually filter out all the position records from our shelter staff. You can separate out a psychiatrist note from a regular physician's notes. So you can actually, in a very granular way, decide what can be seen and not seen. So that's like a local agency. And we need to do that as a prerequisite to integration between different agencies, because you can imagine that, as a physician, you might not feel comfortable having your records seen in a social service agency by a housing provider, for instance. You might misuse them one way or another. So, so that's where we actually built that into the integration bus. So the integration bus actually has a community agreed upon matrix of role-based access that determines who can, what role can see what kind of records. So that's kind of centrally. So, for instance, an agency that is a health provider couldn't arbitrarily change some of those settings. So I feel like looking at some of these medical notes or not by changing somebody's role, for instance. I don't know if
The
that
agency can't do that.
you cannot do that. That's right. It's centrally controlled. There's local control, so you can create new roles and you can change what you can view. But in terms of what's sent to your agency from a remote location, that's determined through this bus.
So the data isn't actually sent unless those requirements are met?
So that's a good question. So the data isn't actually sent. The data is viewed live. So for instance, if you were to pull up the plug on the integrator, you would not be able to see anybody else's notes anymore. The notes all reside in, they're all distributed, so everybody has their own record. When you turn the integrator on, you're suddenly able to view seamlessly those records. And so that was the model that we followed. We thought, we kind of hummed and hawed about what model should we have records kind of transferring. And as a first release, I think this was the best choice for us, because it made things a lot easier for the agencies to become comfortable with this. They can easily pull out and reverse their participation in integration, for instance, and could also allow a client to reverse integration as well. So if a client suddenly feels uncomfortable with sharing their information, imagine how difficult it would be to suddenly have to pull those records out. So it's a lot more powerful than our current paper system right now. So in a paper system, if your mental health hospital sends your entire record to an office, and then you feel uncomfortable about that, you might have a hard time locating that and getting that sent back. So with this system, when you turn that off, it reverses the rating. So that client, it's as if nothing is ever triggered for that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Can a shelter client opt out of Casey?
Right. So the default setting is that you're not integrated. So you have to actively request integration. And we're very particular with the language that we use. It's the client chooses this. It's not something that the provider does, or it's not the provider's integrating care, it's the client integrating the care. And so the consent form is described that way, all our literature is described that way. It's very client-centric and recovery-based. The client is in charge of their recovery. It's a recovery-based model. And so, again, the default is no integration and the client requests it. And this is very different actually than healthcare and the privacy legislation in Ontario, which was a much higher level of much higher standard of privacy, because in Ontario right now, actually a lot of people aren't aware of this. If you walk into a hospital, there's a little brochure somewhere in the corner by the pharmacy wicket or something that tells you that your information can be viewed by a number of different hospitals and providers without you even knowing it through implied consent. Which is, probably for 95–99% of the population, people really care, I don't really care, but for a number of people, it's a big problem because of how large it's grown. Yeah.
If I was in a community and there was a lot of people who were Oscar users already, how much, and I'm thinking about the business plan for implementing something like that into a shelter situation or multiple shelter situations. What kind of cash outlay do you think we're talking about here? Are we thinking about computers and then accessing the servers that are already existing in the community? And so in this case, that would just be cost of hardware? Or how would that work?
So a typical agency in Toronto already has computers, already has internet access, and we were funded by the LIN actually to do installations and stuff, but we costed it out for particular agencies. And it's literally the time that our developer spends installing software, which takes a few hours. That's really